Hello. Great way to start. Hello, everybody. Let's start our series about Vedic wisdom. You guys were all really into the idea that I would do this, and that I found that quite inspirational. So let's get to it. So the first topic that I've thought of covering in the Vedic wisdom series is creation. And I think the most important thing for you to first of all understand about Vedic concept of creation is that the English word creation is not really accurate. That the Vedas don't really describe things as being created and destroyed. And this is really difficult for people to grasp in the modern world, whether you're Indian or African or American. It doesn't make a difference for everybody these days. It's very difficult to grasp the fact that the Vedas really don't tell a narrative that involves creation. Because it just seems like, what? So Vedic terms are sarga, and pralaya, right? So English versions of those terms can be creation and destruction, but sarga really means coming out, coming up, waking up, and pralaya really means going to sleep, going down, lying down. So the Vedic concept of creation and destruction isn't really the same one that you probably have in mind when you think about the concept of creation. When you think about the concept of creation, like, oh wow, look at this cool chutter. It was created. I wonder who created it. There was a factory somewhere that created this thing, and before it was created, it didn't exist. So that kind of creation is not what happens to the universe. All right. So I'm going to read you actually a direct quote from Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is very handy to use for surveying what the Vedas in general think about things, because that's what the Gita is. It's a survey of the entire Veda, written by Vyas. So why don't we get straight to it? So in the 13th chapter of the Gita, which is a special chapter because it's the first chapter that really starts to summarize the Jnanic content of the Veda, which means the really philosophical or scientific content in the Veda. The previous 6 chapters were about bhakti, the emotional content, and the first 6 chapters in the Gita are about karma, or the behavior. The stuff about behavior that's in the Veda. So from 13 on, he starts to talk about more scientific things, more not epistemology, but empirical things and knowledge-oriented things. So it's a very important chapter, and the 20th text in there is really, really essential for understanding this topic of creation, right? So that text says, Purushas prakritim chaiva vidyanadi upavapi. Then it says vikaramscha gunaschaiva vidi prakriti sambhavan. So it's 2 sentences. The first sentence says that there's something called prakriti and something called purusha that are involved in creation. Now, one sense of these words, prakriti and purusha, is male and female. And so that's a very beautiful thing. In fact, if you think about the words I just told you about, shrishti and pralaya, it's like waking up and going to sleep. The thing that I love about Vedic wisdom is once you understand it, you see it all the time everywhere. Like once you understand the nature of creation and destruction from a Vedic point of view, you see it everywhere all the time. Things wake up, go back to sleep. The winter, the spring, the summer, the fall. It's the same pattern. Our night and the way that we behave at night and midnight and dawn and midday, it's the same pattern as the universe follows. Waking up, going to sleep, and that the process of creation being a combination of male and female principles. You see that everywhere. So it's like directly verifiable proof. In fact, Krishna says that it's pratyaksha dharma, that you can actually verify it by experience. The information in the Vedas is verifiable by experience. So there's these two principles involved in creation, prakriti and purusha. The words, they don't mean male and female, but they have a contextual meaning that can be applied to mean male and female. What they actually mean is there is a being, purusha, and prakriti, the being's power to accomplish things. That's what prakriti is, the power to accomplish things. If you look at the word prakriti, krit, like in kritika, krit means to do or just to initiate something. And pra means for, like pro, English prefix pro. So it's for doing. Prakriti means the stuff that is something that lets you do stuff. So like your energy and your skills and your tools and all that stuff are your prakriti. So your body actually is your prakriti because it's the gigantic tool that you have. It's the immediate tool. And then the purusha is you yourself, like the being using the tools, etc., etc. So it says prakriti purushas chaiva vidhi anadi ubhav api. He says you have to know, vidhi, that they are both ubhao anadi, without a beginning. So this is the concept that we all have a difficult time getting. But once you understand this concept, a lot of the mystery, a lot of the brick walls into understanding Vedic philosophy disappear once you get this point. The concept of anadi, which means something that doesn't have a beginning. Adi means to begin. Anadi means without a beginning. So what Krishna says here is prakriti, which we commonly think of as matter, and purusha, which we commonly think of as spirit. In other words, the actual being is the spirit, the purusha, and then the stuff that the being does things with is prakriti, which is like matter. So he's saying matter and spirit, prakriti and purusha, these are both anadi, beginningless. So this is really important. The Vedic concept of creation involves the concept of being beginningless. So it's not a creation ex nihilo. It's not a creation like a creation of this chutter. It didn't exist and now it exists. After you create it, after you sow it. So this is very important because you are not created. God didn't create you. Nobody created God either. There are things which so this one alone will just blow your mind and change your whole life if you grasp this point. Because all of a sudden all these things that seem like fairy tales will become real for you and will become as tangible as your fingernails. The concept of eternality, the concept of God, the concept of spirit is real. It's not a fairy tale. It's as real as your nose. And once you understand what anadi is, something that's beginningless. So let me try to explain that the concept of reality and the foundation of reality. But let's finish with this because that's actually what Krishna's trying to do in this verse. There's prakriti, purushas, chaiva, vidyanadi ubhav api. You have to understand, please understand, he says, api. I'm sorry to rock your world. That's what api is like, sorry about that, but. sorry to rock your world with this, but you have to understand that matter and spirit, Prakriti and Purusha, are both eternal. They're both beginningless. Neither of them was ever created. And then the second sentence he's going to explain a little bit more about that. But let's stop with this first sentence first. How can there be something which was not created? This is the thing. Once you grasp this point, then it's like the door to enlightenment gets a lot wider. You can fit through it a lot easier. Once you understand this point, how can there be something that was not created? So the way that I was able to get whatever grasp on it I have is when I realized that what does reality mean? It means something that you can experience, right? You can. The thing is unreal, you can't experience it. It's unreal. You can never really touch it, taste it. But if something is real, you can actually touch it, taste it, feel it, right? So reality means something you can experience. So what is reality therefore predicated on? Reality, by the way, is the same as Prakriti. Same as Prakriti. That's what Krishna's talking about in this verse. He's saying Prakriti, or reality, is beginningless, but he has this other entity involved in here, Purusha, because reality is predicated on something. And you may be telling me, but Vic, you got this chudder was created, your shirt was created, your body was created, everything is created, and it gets destroyed. So what are you talking about something that isn't created? So reality is this thing that has constant things being created and destroyed in it, but reality is predicated on something. What is it predicated on? Well, not predicated means like it has a foundation. Without this foundation, it can't exist. Like a house is predicated on the cement that's on the bottom. So if reality is the thing which you can experience, then what is the basis for reality, without which there can't be any reality? What is it? Reality is the thing you can experience. So what's the basis of reality? An experiencer. If you don't have an experiencer, you cannot have anything to experience. So that's what Purusha is. Purusha is the experiencer. Prakriti is the experienced. The observer and the observed. Beginnings, endings, middles, shapes, forms, names, colors. Those are all things that are experienced by the experiencer. The experiencer cannot be generated. The experiencer generates experiences. See what I'm saying? The house doesn't generate the foundation or hold the foundation. The foundation holds the house. The experiencer holds reality, but isn't a part of it, isn't created by it, isn't created in it. So there's this thing, Purusha, which is synonymous with Brahman, or consciousness, the experiencer. The experiencer is without ending, without beginning, because the experiencer is the basis for which there can be any beginning. So just try to think about that intellectually, but also just try to absorb it. Think about it intellectually, but also try to absorb it. At a certain point, if you're sincere in your contemplation of it, at a certain point, you'll actually just see it. It will make sense and it won't feel confusing. Like you'll just experience it. Aha, I get it. The observer has to be there. Otherwise, there's no such thing as anything observed. And see, now this is where the second part of Krishna's, the thing that I'm quoting from Bhagavad Gita comes in. The second sentence is, because in the first sentence, Krishna says, hey, both of these guys, the experiencer and the experienced, have no beginning. But, so then you or Arjun who's listening to this statement may think, what are you talking about? There's tons of stuff with beginnings. So Krishna says in the second sentence, Vikaram cha gunaishchaiva prakritim sambhavam. So he says that although prakriti, which means our stuff, like anything that exists in the world, although prakriti has no beginning, it has this property, its quality or its guna. It has gunas or qualities, like shapes, colors, sounds, textures, flavors. Prakriti has those. The Purusha doesn't. The Purusha is the one who tastes and experiences and sees and smells. But the Prakriti is the one that has the smell, has this flavor, has the sound, has the color. So Prakriti is the thing that has guna, or qualities, qualifications. And those qualities do something called vikara. It's not sarga, it's not that the qualities are created, but vikara means to change. So what he's describing here is that Prakriti is an eternal unit. Now also, I kind of wanted to say this at the beginning of the video too. This subject about creation is really covered in great detail in the Puranas. So we can revisit this topic if you want, like on 3 or 4 sessions, easy. And there's a lot of details and stuff. But right now, I want to kind of give you like the most important thing to grasp first, which is that really there's no such thing as creation. There's just change. This is the point that I'm really trying to get across. And hopefully I didn't get too technical too fast. But the point is that according to the Vedas, there is no such thing as creation or destruction. There's only change. And that has a very important, immediate thing, impact on you as you think about things that come into your life, things that go out of your life, people that are born, people that die, things that start, things that end, things that you get, things that you lose. There's no beginning or end to anything, but there's a constant state of change. And it is a constant state of change in Prakriti. So there appears to be beginnings and ends, and we can speak about, and the Puranas definitely will give us a really elaborate description of how evolutions happen and how things become manifest from simpler things and all that kind of stuff. In Prakriti, how Prakriti transforms to become all the various shapes. But the really important thing to grasp first is this is not a beginning or an end, but a cycle. Does that make sense? Let me know if you're following so far. So the point I'm trying to make so far is that Vedic concept of creation is that there is no such thing as creation. Strictly speaking, in the English word, there's only change of things. Let me check and see my YouTube feed if anybody's got any questions about this. Where did my YouTube feed go? Here it is. What about Brahma? Brahma is the one who assists the changes of Prakriti, the primordial changes of Prakriti. We'll talk about that in a while. What about the talk on Astrologicals and the Nagas? That's a different subject. That'll be like some other time. Was there a time before physical form? This is an interesting question. No, there's not. Prakriti is the essence. Purusha is the essence. Prakriti is the form. So Krishna's saying very clearly, this is why Gita is such a gem, because it's very succinct but very exact and very clear. Krishna's saying really clearly, Prakritim Purushas Chaiva. Together, Prakriti and Purusha, Vidyanadi Ubhavapi. Both of them are eternal. They are eternally together. Male, female are always together. There's no such thing as female if you don't have male. There's no such thing as male if you don't have female. There's no such thing as a form without an essence. And there's no such thing as an essence without a form. There's no meaning or tactility, and I can find you, if we had time, like 6 hours to sit around and talk about this, I could find you 25 references in Sanskrit that say this exact thing in different ways. But there's no such thing as essence without form, and this is an important point. There's never a time when there was no form, there was just essence. Prakriti and Purusha are always co-manifest. Because essence always expresses itself in form. You see? You're always making form. Every conscious thing, every Brahman, every particle of consciousness manifests itself in form. Leslie wants to know, what is the beginning? How did we become? But I just told you, I'm trying to tell you is, you have no beginning. This is the point that you have to grasp. You're the observer. You're the basis for all the beginnings and ends. Beginning is a concept. The concept of beginning is a concept that applies to the things you observe. When did the observation start? When did the observation end? You are the perceiver. The concept of beginning and ending doesn't apply to you. How did we become? You didn't become. You are, and you are the basis for all things that become. But I'll give you another tale, because there's a reason why you exist. There's not a history to why you exist, but there's a reason why we exist. So the reason why we exist is for our ananda, or pleasure, happiness. Specifically, it's for the happiness of the Param Purusha, the original, or this paramount, the supreme experiencer. Everything that exists, all the prakriti that manifests, everything that manifests is prakriti of the Param Purusha, the original being, including you and me. And so the reason why we exist is because the Param Purusha wants to experience something cool, something beautiful, something amazing, something inspiring, something thrilling, something different, something unusual. That's why the Param Purusha manifests things which themselves are Purushas. But don't think that this happens at a certain point in time. This is the nature of the way consciousness manifests in this way eternally, anadi, without beginning. But the reason for it is consciousness wants to experience things, so it manifests in many different forms, and it wants to experience stuff that's not boring, so it manifests other independent conscious beings. Okay. So what else do we got here? Good, I'm glad you understand. What else we got? Any questions over here on Instagram or Facebook? This text is way smaller. I have to check. I don't bring my glasses up here. How do I know if I'm alive? I like this question. This is very simple. If you're alive, you just go like this. Did you feel it? So you know you're alive. You know you're alive because you can experience. That's the basic cogito ergo sum. And this concept, cogito ergo sum, is very, very, very compatible with Vedic. The way a Vedic sage would answer that same question. What do you think? Here's a question from Levi. To keep my eye on the clock too. What do you think about how New Age type of thinking, where it entails that our imagination consciousness is God, and all the names of God are simply allegorical to represent the self? You are God. That's a fact. The Vedas say tat tvam asi. After describing the supreme Purusha, it then says tat tvam asi. You are that. But obviously, you must not exactly be that. Otherwise, you wouldn't need anybody to tell you that, would you? So, don't be overly simplistic. Like, look, this is a drum. This is a drum. They're both drums. Are they exactly the same? They're not exactly the same, but they have sameness. This is a light. The sun is also a light. Are they the same? Yes. Are they exactly the same? No. Okay? So, and this is a guitar, and so is a Les Paul. Are they exactly the same? No. Are they the same? Yes. So we are God because we're both Purusha. We're both the observers of reality. But are we the same exact as God? Not exactly, because the one who is called Param Purusha, Vedic actually has a concept of an actual like it has a monotheism to it also, though it's not monotheistic in the same way as Western philosophies, but it has a monotheism to it in the sense that ultimately everything is manifested from one being. That one being is called the Param Purusha. And that supreme person, that supreme consciousness. That supreme consciousness manifests other consciousness. But the other consciousness are manifested from the supreme. So it's like the sun and the rays of the sun. The rays of the sun are identical to the sun. The sun doesn't exist without the sun rays. The sun rays don't exist without the sun. Yet the sun rays don't produce other rays. They are not the sun. Something like that. Leslie, that's a great statement. Thank you. But isn't this really funny what Leslie says? She says, Vedic is amazing. I still follow tropical, but opening to Vedic because of Vic. So the rest of you guys will be laughing, right? Because Leslie doesn't know that Vic is a tropical Vedic astrologer. Why was the human being created? So again, there's not a question of why. Like, if you look at all life forms, all life forms, like whether it's a mouse or a human or whatever it is, a tree, they have senses, and then they have apparatus to nourish those senses. That's all that we are, all the different life forms, and all of them manifest senses. This is another text in the Gita where Krishna says Prakriti Stani Karshati. The Purusha goes into Prakriti because it likes Prakriti. So it goes into Prakriti just like a man wants to go into a woman. So it goes into Prakriti, and then just like then the sperm will fertilize an egg and pull together a body. So in the same way, when Purusha puts itself in Prakriti, it pulls together elements, in particular manasashtendryasyani, into particular bodies and minds, which are suited for experiencing different gunas or qualities of Prakriti. So there's so many different life forms because there's so many different qualities in the world, and different life forms are suited better or worse for experiencing different ones. Yeah, so the Vedic, the human life form is particularly meant for understanding words. When people want to experience words and get the information, the experience that you can get out of words, and make the progress in experiencing life that you can make by interacting with words, they become humans. So it's really a shame when people become human beings, but they don't utilize words very well. Yeah. That's a shame. So, it's actually more convenient and less frustrating to be a bird or a rabbit or a bacteria or a tree if you're not interested in words. Okay. Let's see. What else? Here's a question. Why on Instagram? Why do we struggle so much to grasp these concepts? Why do we not just simply know these things? Because you have ages and ages and ages and ages of avidya. avidya means incorrect perception. So you have ages and ages and lifetimes of seeing things in an inaccurate way. So why do you have the tendency to see things in an inaccurate way? Take the example of a guy, because your name's Michelle. So let's take this example as a guy who kind of likes you. And this guy is kind of okay to you. You kind of think he's kind of okay. You're going to have some avidya, because you're going to think, you're not going to want to notice that he's a slob, or whatever it is, that he's a drunk. Because there's stuff about him that you like, and you want it to be right. Isn't it? So the reason why we have avidya is because we have desires. And specifically, the reason why we have avidya actually is because we have desires which are not really aligned with the Parampurusha's desires. We have like independent desires or disharmonious desires. Independent is the wrong word, but disharmonious desires. If you have harmonious desires, those desires actually give you vidya, or accurate perception. But if you have desires which are disharmonious with the Parampurusha's desires, then you can't really see things the way they actually are. Because seeing things the way they actually are, you see the Parampurusha. Now, why wouldn't you want to see the Parampurusha? Because the Gita explains all this. The reason why you wouldn't want to see the Parampurusha is because you like Prakriti a lot. You like the qualities of Prakriti. You like certain flavors, you like certain colors, and you want them for yourself. So you don't want to see the fact that they belong to somebody else. So you won't see that they belong to somebody else. So we all have a basic misconception about what we're experiencing that we've had since the beginningless beginning. And it piles up lifetime after lifetime. It gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker, and still until you actually get to human life and you start to use words, especially if you get words that come from the Vedas, or if you get words from people who are influenced by ideas that have come from the Vedas, you get the chance to start scrubbing off some of that avidya. And when you scrub off the avidya, then you can change your knowledge. And then once you get the avidya off, the concepts that I'm talking about, you won't struggle with it all. They'll just be as simple as plain as day. Lakshmi wants to know, how do you know what's vidya and what's not? The way that you know what's vidya and what's not, you have to have a guru who's bona fide. You have to have a guru who's real. And a real guru is a person who teaches the Vedas. And this may not be fashionable, and it might not be New Age, but this is the Vedic wisdom on how you would know what's vidya and not vidya. The answer is Vishnu has tried to help you understand what's vidya and not vidya by giving you a manual, a guide to what's vidya. So you need to be able to access that guide to Vedas, but it's easiest to access that guide with the help of. It's easiest to access the Veda with the help of somebody who actually knows it. So you need the Vedas and a guru, which doesn't mean that you have to be formally have a guru, blah blah blah. But you need essentially what you need is the wisdom of the Veda coming to you through the guidance of a person that actually understands it, or at the very least understands it a lot better than you do. If you meditate, Lauren wants to ask, if you meditate enough, will we know? If you meditate enough, you can meditate on the wrong thing. You can meditate on something inaccurate. Meditation simply means concentration of the mind. So if you just sit down and meditate, you will meditate upon whatever is in your heart and mind. So meditation has to be in combination with Shravana, or hearing. So in other words, you have to have some content to meditate on. If you just sit down and meditate on anything, you'll meditate on whatever you already know. So you might get more clear about whatever you already know, but you're not going to get beyond what you already know. So the real way that meditation works is the same way that study works at school. You get some new information in, and then you sit down and you think about it really carefully. That's what real meditation is. Levy wants to know isn't the truth in everybody deep down? Actually, the capacity to experience the truth is in everybody deep down. What everybody is Purusha, the capacity to experience reality. But the problem is Anadi, the Purusha, since the beginningless beginning, the Purusha has been attracted to Prakriti. So unwilling to be harmonious with the Parampurusha. So if you're unwilling to be harmonious with the Parampurusha, you're not going to have truth in your heart. You're going to have untruth in your heart. You don't want to see that this woman is already married. You want to see that this woman is single. So actually, in a sense, you do have the truth in your heart. But to be honest with you, although it might not be fashionable to say this, or it might not make you feel great to say this, but the truth is you don't have the truth in your heart. You have lies in your heart. But you have the capacity to experience the truth in your heart. What you need is the wisdom of the Veda, which is just like a little semen from a man. You have everything in your heart to grow a baby. You have the womb, you have everything you need. Eggs, you have breasts you can feed the child. What do you need? You just need a little tiny squiggly thing. Just one little word or two from the Vedas. And then if you take that deep into your heart and you contemplate on it, then the truth will take root in your heart. So hopefully that answers your question. If everybody has a truth, think about this clearly. If you have the truth in your heart, then how the hell do you not experience it? If you have all Vidya and everything already in your heart, then how the hell do you not know it? How could something perfect and true and be covered up and screwed up? So it actually must have never been there since the beginning. Okay, great. Thanks, Leslie. All right, let's see. We got another question. Sorry if I'm ignoring the smaller text. I'm looking at YouTube today. How possible is it to understand the purpose of life and enlightenment? Very possible if you are willing to just accept the basic concept that if you listen to somebody who understands the Vedas, you can get it. Astrology doesn't prove that Levy wants to know if astrology proves that 100% of our existence is predestined. So think about this. Why does the Purusha produce the Prakriti? Because the Purusha wants to experience exciting things. Purusha means consciousness. What does consciousness want? To be conscious of something. Conscious of what? Mashed potatoes? No, conscious of a full course meal. So the Purusha produces other Purushas. The most exciting thing. Krishna in Gita says that I am the object of experience. He's the Purusha, but he's telling us, I am the thing that you really want to experience. And so what has he done? He wants to experience himself too. So he makes duplicates of himself. It doesn't happen at a certain point in history, or it's not a chronological thing, but this is just the way it always is. That the conscious Parampurusha makes other Purushas so that he can experience us. You are not robots. You're individual gods. Because God wants to experience God. Now, the problem is you're covered up with avidya because you don't want to cooperate with this situation for some reason. Because your attraction, your taste, it's no accounting for taste. So some of the Purushas that are created, that manifest from the Parampurusha, have a taste for Prakriti instead of the Parampurusha. Why? Why do you like broccoli and not spinach? It's taste. There's no accounting for taste. So some of the Purushas are interested in Prakriti and they have avidya because of that. The more that you have avidya, the more that you get wrapped up in karma. The more that you get wrapped up in karma, the more that you get wrapped up in a chain of events. The more that you're involved in a chain of events, the more that I know for sure what's going to happen to you tomorrow and how you're going to react to it. So astrology is actually a study of karma and the chain of events of karma, and the positions of the planets are just symbolic indicators of the nature of the karma that's being dispensed at that moment. Okay, so astrology can tell you about the chain of karmic events. And for most people, that's basically the same as telling what's going to happen in their life. However, the nature of what you are is that you are the creator of that chain of events. And so you can modify that chain of events if you learn. All right, let's see what else we got. Let's see, I'm not going to go to the Maldives. I actually had a falling out with the, what do you call it? The organizer of the event. I asked him for a contract and then he threatened to sue me or something. So I was like, I don't want to get dealing with this one. So I'm not sure if it's legit, so I'm not going to go. Lakshmi wants to know, how can we balance the current 21st century demands of life and actually learning the Vedas? They seem to be, they don't. This is also in Bhagavad Gita. By the way, I have a translation of Bhagavad Gita. You can get it on Amazon. If you look up on Amazon, Vic DiCara, Gita, Gita, you can find my book. It's called A Simple Gita. So, it's the third chapter, third, fourth, and fifth chapters. Krishna talks about this very question. How do you balance the demands of life, active life? There's the whole first chapters of Gita are about behavior, how to act. So it doesn't matter if you're in the 21st century or the 55th century or the 2nd century or the minus 12th century. Your actions in the world are your opportunities. They're not contradictory to your spiritual path. Your day-to-day life with your husband, with your kids, with your next door neighbor, with your boss, with your employee is the form. These are all the forms that the Brahman is taking. So these are your opportunities to see your philosophy in action and put your philosophy into action. Somebody says, can I speak about outwitting the stars? You can't outwit the stars. The stars don't have any wit. The stars are indicators of your karma. Your karma is a chain of events. It has no wit. It's a physical mechanism. It's a material law. You have the wit. You're the observer. If you just grasp the thing that I'm talking about, Prakriti Purusham Chaiva, then you'll get all your answers to even weird questions about astrology and stuff like that. All right? So let's get back to the main topic and then wrap it up. So the topic for today was supposed to be creation. And what I wanted to get across to you today is actually the Vedas don't have an idea of creation as if there was a beginning. The Vedic idea of creation is there's no beginning. That existence is beginningless and endless. Just try to just think about it. Like, there cannot be something before there was something, because then that something would be something. If you actually just work with logic, you'll get to the same conclusion as the Vedas. And actually, in the shortly after Buddhism, there was a movement in India called Nyaya, whose objective was to reach the same conclusions as the Vedas, but without using the Vedas, only using logic. And most of those texts, or some of the key texts of Nyaya, still exist today, and you can study them. And they're amazing. If you just think about these things logically, you'll get to the same concept. So the first point that I want to get across to you is there is no beginning or end. Existence is forever. It's beginningless and endless. But existence is a combination of two principles: the substance and the form, the prakriti and the purusha. The purusha is the substance, and the prakriti is the form. The relationship between the two is eternal. It has no beginning. The two are constantly together. The purusha produces prakriti, but the prakriti changes, because that's also the spice of life. The changes are the interesting part. There's two reasons for changes, really. One reason for change is dissatisfaction, and one reason for change is growth. So basically, in our experience, the change is primarily because of dissatisfaction. But even in the Parampurusha or Krishna's experience, there's constant change going on. But not because of dissatisfaction, but because of expansion and growth. Yeah, it's beginningless, but there's a sequence, but there's not a chronological sequence. There's just they call it ontological, which means like a relationship sequence. The relationship sequence or the ontological sequence is the Parampurusha manifests the Prakriti. So in a non-chronological sense, it's first comes Purusha, then comes Prakriti. But it's not chronological. It's just that the Prakriti is the manifestation of the Purusha, but yet the Purusha doesn't exist without the Prakriti. And you and I are part of that Prakriti, but the amazing thing is we're also Purushas. If you think about now, if I tell you that Prakriti and Purusha means male and female, then you can really do a lot of cool thinking about stuff. And you want to know about living in 21st century life, perfectly awesome. Go out and see Prakriti and Purusha happening all the time. Go out and see how men and women are, how they interact with each other. Yeah, okay. This is a good question. I think there's two questions. Here's Fernando. Is it correct to say that there are no references to past lives associated to Ketu? Oh, you're hitting me with a real astrological question right now. He wants to know if it's like classical to say that past life has to do with Ketu and future life has to do with Rahu. I'm not really prepared to really, with finality answer your question. But basically, Ketu is the point where the moon goes south of the ecliptic, and Rahu is the point where the moon goes north of the ecliptic. Now, if you just remember your celestial geometry, the celestial geography. Celestial north means up and out and forward. In the direction of the moon's movement is that Rahu is forward and upward and out, and Ketu is backwards, returning back to the origin point and down. So the fundamental nature of Ketu, classical fundamental nature of Ketu is backwards, downwards, and inwards, and the fundamental nature of Rahu is upwards, forwards, and outwards. So if you put that in the context of lifetimes, then certainly it's not absurd at all to say that Rahu is future life, future anything, and Ketu is past life, past anything. Now, Yuyi says, can you tell the story of Brahma coming from Vishnu's navel? And that is cyclical? So now, as I said, there's a lot of information on creation and how it goes. Actually, they divide creation into two parts. They have a sarga and a visarga, which means like a primary awakening, and then what happens immediately as a result of being awake. How creation is manifests. So when you study Puranas talking about Sarga, or the awakening of existence, you'll hear about how fundamental elements come into being, like these Vedic type of molecules or atoms, like or these days we call it earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, ego. But how these kind of fundamental building blocks come into being, and then what they evolve into, and to eventually become structures that can host consciousness. That's Sarga. And then the Visarga happens where the story that Yui is asking about happens. Visarga is now that it's creation, now that the manifestation has been woken up, what happens with it initially? So what happens initially is you got to get a being in here into the world. The only being that exists prior to the world's shape. Now you'll also find stories about bubbles and eggs. If you study the Vedas, like in random places, you'll hear them talking about universe being inside an egg or a bubble, and lots of bubbles in an ocean. So it's like Sarga is where the bubbles are produced out of Vishnu. Vishnu is the Parampurusha, the original conscious experiencer. And then he manifests as Prakriti, which takes the form of like bubbles or eggs. And then within each bubble, there's like a different timeline that goes on. And into each bubble is like a whole separate little solar system or universe. So in the first person to manifest in there is very special. And that person is called Brahma. So Vishnu has to actually personally put that person in there, because there's nobody else, there's no other way for it to happen. So there's a story that Vishnu is just lying on the water in which these bubbles are produced. And actually he enters into each egg because there's some water at the bottom of each egg or each bubble. And then from his womb, so this also is bend to the male-female concept, that a male deity like Vishnu also has a womb. So from out of his womb, which is situated here, right? This is where your womb is. So from there, out of the umbilical area, it comes a stem. So it's just like, and then a flower comes out, because it's an asexual reproduction. Because there was no mother and father involved in making Brahma. That's why Brahma is called, that he doesn't have a birth. It's called Aja. So anyway, so Vishnu makes a flower come out from his womb, because the flower can produce a child of itself. It has a stamen and a thing, whatever. It has the male and female parts together. So this flower opens up and produces Brahma. Then Brahma is the first guy in the universe. So from the point that Brahma manifests, that's where Sarga stops and Visarga starts. Yeah, so Sarga is like how all these physical principles and molecules and atoms are evolving into these usable forms and forming these structures that can be observed and can transmit like neurological impulses and things. And then when it gets to the stage that it's ready, then Vishnu produces this child out of a flower called Brahma. This is the first one to appear in this universe. Then Brahma starts the process of Visarga. Brahma is the one who's going to actually put the molecules together, make sure that they go into the different forms, understand. He's got to be able to understand how they're supposed to be put together. And then he's going to supervise how they coagulate, so that the universe can do this like second stage of evolution, which is more complicated, to making different life forms and things. So that's the story of Brahma appearing in the universe from Vishnu. Vishnu has to also enlighten Brahma to tell him what he's supposed to be doing. And then from there, it gets more into like a historical sounding tale of how Brahma tried to do this and that and tried to manifest that. Is it cyclical? Is it cyclical? Yes. All of these, it's not only cyclical, it's also factorial, like there's there's infinite instances of it going on at the same time. Yeah. There's hundreds and thousands and infinite numbers of these bubbles with hundreds and thousands of infinite numbers of these Brahmas in them. And the bubble comes out, it has its sarga, it comes out, and then it exists for a while, which is called sthiti, and then it starts to decay, which is called pralaya, and then it goes pops. So it's all also expressed as exhalation and inhalation from Vishnu. All right. So we got 4 more minutes. Got one more question, anybody? Hey, Parisa. Any questions? We got 4 more minutes. Did Vishnu ever wake up? Since this is all his dream, correct? Does Vishnu ever wake up? He's not exactly asleep. Vishnu's eyes are slightly open. The reason why Vishnu's eyes are slightly open is that Vishnu's eyes are not looking at Prakriti that we're looking at. In other words, all of us are looking at Prakriti thinking, wow, this can be mine. I could get this, I could get that. I could be this, I could be that. Vishnu doesn't look at Prakriti in the same way. So Vishnu looks at Prakriti. First of all, Prakriti is Vishnu's. But secondly, even Vishnu looks at Prakriti as this can be theirs. He wants to give to others. So his eyes are focused into a different direction, into a different Prakriti. The Param Prakriti, where the creatures are all harmonious. So he allows this other Prakriti to exist because there's people that want it to exist. And he supports it, but he doesn't participate in it. That's why his eyes are closed to it. And he has a sleep pattern, which I think is 311 trillion years equivalent. So during the time where he has a sleep pattern, when he's awake, to the extent that he's awake, then all the bubbles come out and Brahma comes in and all these things manifest. During the time when he sleeps, then they all decay and then repercolate. All right, great. So I'm going to end it here. And this was fun. Did you like that? This was great. So I wonder what the next topic should be. I'll think of the next topic, whatever grabs me for next week. You guys, if you want to just post somewhere, let me know if you have any idea for next topics in the Vedic wisdom of the Vedas thing. Thanks, everybody. Now shut everybody down. And turn this one off.